Why isn't therapy helping you overcome your attachment style? Or maybe why didn't it help you overcome your attachment style? This is a question I very often get from clients and community members. And what I want to do in this video is basically give you a bit more clarity as to why therapy struggles to fully and specifically help people overcome their attachment styles. Now, specifically, I'm talking about talk therapy, traditional therapy, but also each individual therapy on its own. There are many different frameworks within the therapy, and on their own, they can help you make a lot of progress, but overall, it's not going to help you overcome the complete thing. So this is not me bashing on therapy. This is me just trying to give you some hope, because very often what I can imagine and what I can see and what I have seen in the past is that when people go through therapy and they don't overcome their problems, they can feel defeated. They can feel like, well, I've done the thing that everybody says helps, that everybody says works, and I'm still struggling with this problem. So if you're new here, my name is Aaron. I struggled with disorganized attachment for 8 years. I tried anything and everything to overcome it. Eventually, I got to a place where I was much more secure, and now I'm using what I've learned and what I understand looking back over those 8 years to help people overcome their anxious and disorganized attachment in a much shorter time. So to really give you an understanding of what we're dealing with here, I want to bring up a formula I created when looking back on my whole journey throughout disorganized attachment. And in case you didn't know, disorganized attachment is a combination of anxious and avoidant. So basically, I dealt with both. Okay, so here is that formula I was talking about. Now, what this specifically is looking at reactions or unhealthy reactions within attachment styles. So for anxious attachment, it could be asking clingy or needy questions. For disorganized, it could be an aggressive or accusatory reaction. For avoidant attachment, it could be shutting down and moving away or distancing when vulnerability needs to take place. So I'm going to quickly go over this and quick overview outline. If you want to go in depth into this formula, as well as the solutions to this formula, I've got a video which I'll put up here somewhere. Quite new to YouTube still, so I'll figure it out. But what we're looking at first is the situation. So that's kind of what I was speaking about before. With each attachment styles, a different situation will trigger it. Usually within anxious and disorganized, though, similar situations can trigger it because the beginning of the disorganized reaction is very similar, if not the same, to anxious attachment. So the situation is something that happens within the relationship that will basically trigger something inside of us and then make us react. So let's use anxious attachment, for example. I saw a lot of people coming from anxious attachment to this video. So a very common situation within anxious attachment is not getting a text back, right? Now, what people don't understand is there are actually unconscious steps to this formula. And these, when I say unconscious, I mean it kind of happens automatically and we don't really understand it nor dig into it. And sometimes they can happen literally in the span of seconds. So what we think and what we feel is it goes straight from situation to reaction to then feeling bad about our reaction, right? But that's if you're not aware of these unconscious steps. So from the situation, let's say not getting a text back, usually there's going to be a negative thought. Now that negative thought is going to be something along the lines of like, they don't want to text me back, right? And even if we try and argue against that, that negative thought still stays. Now, once that negative thought stays, because unconsciously we're grabbing onto it, and I'll explain in another video why, but because we're grabbing onto that, and even though we've argued against it, it's sitting in the back of our mind, that brings up difficult feelings. Now, the difficult feelings are things like anxiety, stress, worry, doubt, fear. And once you bring up those difficult feelings and it pairs with that negative thought, even if we've argued against that negative thought, all of a sudden we're feeling it too. And if we're feeling it and thinking it, that's usually when we get into the space where we're like, well, it must be true, right? That negative thought that we had, which is they don't want to text me back, must be true because I'm thinking it and I'm feeling it. Once that happens, there becomes like a tornado inside of us. And I'm just going to put like a massive like explosion there because that's how it feels inside, right? That tornado, that explosion sends us into fight or flight mode, which you probably know about by now. And that fight or flight mode puts us in a very like reactive, instinctual space where we are basically reacting as if we were a caveman back in the day. You know, if there's a threat coming towards us, then we're going to react almost automatically. We're not in the pilot seat really anymore. And that's when we react unhealthily, because I want you to notice something important here. Very often, the unhealthy reactions will come straight from the negative thought. For example, if the negative thought was, they don't want to text me back, then the unhealthy reaction within anxious attachment will be like, what did I do? Did I do something wrong that you don't want to text me back? Why don't you want to text me back? Are you with someone else that you don't want to text me back? It's like this idea that the negative thought, even if it's not true and even if it is irrational, we believe it to be true and we're reacting in a way based on it being true. So our actions then become irrational, if that makes sense. So basically, we're being driven, manipulated, pushed by this negative thought and these difficult feelings to then react unhealthily. And then what happens afterwards, once we get that reassurance that we need, or we calm down a little bit after time, is we then feel bad about ourselves, right? We feel as though there's something wrong with us, that we're broken, because we are the ones reacting in this way, and our logical part of our brain knows that it's not necessarily rational. We know that it's not necessarily the case, so we feel bad about how we reacted. And if we feel bad about how we reacted, or if you feel bad about how you reacted, you then basically look at yourself as like as if there's something wrong with you. You believe that you are broken, that you are flawed, because you don't understand where it's coming from or why it's happening. The problem with that is you basically create a cycle, and you basically reinforce through your own actions your insecurity. And if you didn't know this, attachment styles are also known as insecure attachment, because a huge part of them are our insecurities. Now, the definition of insecurity is uncertainty or anxiousness about yourself. And if you think about this, if you are feeling bad about who you are and how you show up and how you act, and you think you're just broken or flawed, that is literally the definition of insecurity. So this formula, this cycle, continues on itself and reinforces that insecurity about yourself, and therefore reinforces the attachment. Knowing these unconscious steps is very important. And again, in the video that I spoke about before, that is out there for you to see, it'll go into depth about the solutions. But what I want to show you now is a quick outline of the solutions, and then we're going to get back to our point about why therapy on its own, traditionally talk therapy, is not something that's going to be able to hit all these problem points within this formula, for example. What we want to do is, and this goes back onto the solution of this whole thing, is we want to work backwards, because very often we're going to almost automatically get to that difficult feelings and reaction stage until we start working on important key points. So number one would be the difficult feelings. You want to counteract the difficult feelings with things like emotional regulation, with things like self-reassurance. Both of those, two of those different things can come from different types of therapies. And this is where we get into the importance of why therapy on its own is not helpful. As I said before, when you're in that fight or flight mode, what happens is your nervous system is dysregulated. So one of the therapies that very much counteracts the dysregulation of your nervous system is somatic therapy. Now, somatic therapy focuses on the body, the feelings themselves, and how to like healthily express that and also regulate the nervous system. So that's already one therapy, and excuse my mouse handwriting there. So we got somatic therapy already. Another thing within these difficult feelings, we have something called an inner child, which you might have heard before. Now, there's also a psychological version of the inner child, but the inner child itself, there are ways to reparent and also to reassure that inner child. So that could be in itself inner child work. Man, this is terrible handwriting. Sorry, I wish I had a stylus. Anyway, so we need somatic therapy to regulate the nervous system. We need inner child work to go back and reparent and also to reassure that inner child. And what that'll do is it'll put you in a much more calm space, a much more calm space physically and also emotionally, so that you can then react not react, but you can then look at the situation in a much more logical, true space. Now, once that happens, then you can start attacking things like the negative thought. There are a few different ways to attack the negative thought, both within the actual situation and outside of that. Now, one method, which you've probably heard of before, is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, CBT helps in a variety of ways. Specifically within attachment styles, it can help with understanding and arguing against those limiting thoughts, those limiting beliefs that come up. And by the way, a little side note here, the negative thought is caused by a core belief that you have, but I'll go into depth in that in another video. So basically what CBT can help with is understanding and creating truth behind these thoughts that may not actually be true or rational. So it helps you argue against them and create some logic and rationality so that you can not be so much controlled by those thoughts that may not be true at all, if that makes sense. Another thing that's really important here is positive psychology. Now, positive psychology touches on a few important techniques and tools such as, meditation, gratitudes, and the idea behind it is really to create a more positive outlook of life. And that's really helpful too, because if you think about it, negative thought is a negative thought. And if you really want to make massive change and impact in your mind, you want to move towards a more positive thought, and you do that by creating a positive mindset. So if you look at this already, we've got 4 different types of therapeutic frameworks, psychological frameworks. Now, the other part, once you've overcome the difficult feelings or calmed them down, and you've also then overcome or argued against the negative thought, then you need to move into, instead of an unhealthy reaction, you want to move into a healthy response. And the reason you want to do this is because if you remember this little cycle from before, when you are having the unhealthy reaction, then you feel guilty and ashamed about yourself, right? You feel like there's something wrong with you. So if you can overcome these unconscious steps and then also understand what the healthiest response is in those moments, which by the way would come from something like specifically coaching. For example, since I've been through this for 8 years, I know what is healthy and what isn't healthy. So if you then react in a healthy way, what will happen then is you will feel more confident and better about yourself. So you'll be confident about who you are and how you show up in relationships. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a new and healthier cycle of confidence. And the opposite of insecurity is confidence. It's not actually secure. The important thing to note here, and the point of this video, is we have 1, coaching, 2, CBT, 3, positive psychology, 4, somatic therapy, 5, inner child work. 5 different frameworks, and obviously within each of those, there are specific things that help with attachment styles specifically. 5 different frameworks within one realm or challenge, which is attachment styles, right? This is why traditional therapy or just talk therapy is not going to help you completely overcome this challenge. And again, this is not to bash therapy. What the point of this is to help you understand that just doing one of those things is not going to fully help you overcome this challenge. And there's a lot that goes into it. And just by the way, the importance of talk therapy specifically is to help you basically become more comfortable with opening up, being vulnerable, understanding and expressing your emotions. So there is an importance to that too. But my point is, it's one small part of the puzzle. Now again, this is not to try and make you feel overwhelmed or feel bad about the situation. Actually, what I'm trying to do here is create clarity. There is a path to get there. There is hope, is what I'm really trying to instill in you in this video, and to help you see and understand that yes, therapy might have not worked for you, and it may not work for you, but that's just because it's only hitting one small piece of the entire puzzle. So just to recap, there are multiple different parts of attachment styles that need to be addressed, and therapy on its own very often only focuses on one of those 5 or 6 therapies or modules or frameworks, whatever you want to call them. So it doesn't approach enough aspects of it to really make massive progress. And that's very often why, unfortunately, on average, it takes someone about 3 to 5 years with the therapist to work towards a more secure attachment style. That being said, and I promise you this is not a brag, I'm extremely grateful I can do this. Because of what I've been through, because of what I've experienced, because of what I've learned and what I've acquired skills, knowledge, and abilities-wise, because of what I've been through and my understanding of the hands-on experience, there are clients and community members that I've taken into a more secure attachment style within about 3 or 4 months. Now, I really want that to sink in for a second because it took me personally 8 years. So the fact that I can help someone get to a more secure space in less than 1 year, I'm really grateful for that. It justifies in my mind, and it makes me feel as though those 8 years of struggling on my own were worth it. That being said, if you want to work with me personally, I'll drop the link to my website down below. You can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I've got quite a large following all over there. I'm recently moved into YouTube. I also have a free ebook for anxious attachment that I'll also link in the description below. And then lastly, I also have an online community where we also work through this all together with a bunch of courses, live events, all that kind of thing. So if you want help with this, I am here. Otherwise, subscribe, follow for more information, because I will be going into as much knowledge as I can possibly give on this subject. And then I will later on specifically be going into anxious and disorganized attachment. So thanks for watching, and as always, keep growing.